Hello and welcome back to DevCast Softs. I'm back this week after being a bit poorly last week, but unfortunately Wale has since come down with something, so he won't be joining us. So we're rotating the cast through. James is staying strong, however, and is still with us.
Maybe I'll be dead next week. We'll see.
It's your turn then, so
Yeah.
hopefully not. I don't really wish any more illness on anyone. So this week we're gonna have a look at the Terraform CDK. I've been playing with it a little bit in my spare time, so we're gonna start off and sort of go through the install process and kind of see how far we get with it. I was doing it on a different computer to this one, so this will be entirely blank, and hopefully the M1 architecture on ARM doesn't mess around with anything. So potential surprises to ensue later on.
Good old arm.
Right, let me flick over to the other screen and we will start off. Where are we going?
Is it worth saying what the CDK actually is as a thing?
Potentially.
Because while it's in our title, I think a lot of people don't know what the CDK is.
Let me just.
And
Do you
now my
want to?
brain is going, what does CDK stand for? Code Development Kit?
I think so because it's different from the SDK, but what the Terraform CDK is. Let me get up the diagram that kind of shows you what it is. Background that.
Because
This is
there's multiple different types of CDKs because Amazon has their own, I think. Um,
yes. So
it, it is a way of deploying infrastructure, writing actual programming, like using an actual normal programming language like Python or Go or JavaScript.
yeah,
Rather, you can use TypeScript. You can't use JavaScript. So close.
that would be impressive if you could use JavaScript to deploy it, but I don't think I'd want to. Although people always hate on JavaScript. I haven't really used that much of it, but I think it's just there's some weird things that go on in web browsers that cause
TypeScript
it.
is just JavaScript. TypeScript is just built on top of JavaScript, and lets you have types. That's the name.
Yeah. So the little diagram here is essentially showing what the Terraform CDK is. So Terraform itself, a lot of people think of Terraform as HCL, whereas Terraform's not actually HCL. You can pass Terraform various things. So a few people may have come across Terraform being passed JSON instead of HCL. You can define your, your block in JSON, pass it to Terraform. It will then interface with the APIs for your various infrastructure and some things less infrastructure providers.
It's worth noting all Terraform does is call APIs.
Yeah,
So while it is known for setting up infrastructure, you can use it to manage anything that has an API. Whether you should or not is a different conversation for a different time.
the should is always the much harder conversation with these things. Can
Yes.
is a yes or no. Should is a whole lot of grey. But yeah, so Terraform can ingest you. A lot of people that use Terraform, most people will write HCL, and it's most of the stuff that I've come across when I've been writing my Terraform. It's written in HCL. Now you can do it in JSON. So I've played around a little bit with JSON, and the reason for this is we wanted a Jenkins pipeline to be able to manipulate variables files for our Terraform, and it's a lot easier to find parsers for JSON than it is to find parsers for HCL.
I think variable files are quite common to be in JSON because they are generally, certainly if you're not using Terraform Cloud or Terraform Enterprise, you want to take all this data and load it into Terraform. It's easier if it's JSON format because a programming language can have a big old dictionary and you can just go convert to JSON and then save it to where you want.
Yeah. The other one that I don't really know that is you can. I think it's Kubernetes. He's CRDS. I'm not even sure what it stands for.
That is definitely the Kubernetes logo.
But yeah, it's a Kubernetes kind of manifest thing that you can pass to Terraform. I think was it Kubernetes? Let's look it up and see what it actually
I
is.
suppose if because I've seen that thing on the diagram so many times and never actually thought about it. But I suppose if you are using Helm charts and pure Kubernetes stuff, having the ability to set up EKS in the same resource is not a bad idea.
Custom resources? I'm not even sure. I don't think that. What are custom resource definitions? So you can, I guess it's sort of a Kubernetes YAML style deployment that you can pass Terraform. But then the one we're looking at today is the CDK for Terraform, which is you write one of these 5 supported languages, so TypeScript, Python, Java, C# or Go code, and that creates the sort of map that Terraform then uses to do your API calls. So what actually happens here is we have CDK, so we'll write I plan to write Python today because it's the one I know the best. And don't.
What do you mean? Not going to dive into Go?
I think out of those, Go is the one I know the least. I know, or Go and TypeScript I've never touched. I've done quite a bit in Java, but sort of it's something that I kind of like, but then don't really do that much of, so get very confused about because it's quite different structures to most of the languages I use.
I think for this type of demo, Python is fine.
It's also one that's easier to read. I don't remember when I did C#, but I think I did it for some interviews way back. I learned it for an interview, and
Everyone wants that ASP.
I didn't get the job, so maybe I didn't actually learn enough of it. But I think I learned enough to get past the tech test. So for 2 days of learning, it was worthwhile. But anyway, I digress. And so what it actually does, it builds the JSON for you that it's passed to Terraform, which then calls the API. So on this computer, I don't think I have Terraform. I've created a directory to do this demo and just to make things a little bit easier, but I will see if I have it. So you call it by CDK-TF if you want to, and it looks like I don't have it. So we will start the first phrase, which will be
finding the option of how to install it.
If you want to get started, it will normally have an install.
You're on the TypeScript version of the page. You probably want to change to the Python version.
Well, I don't think it'll matter for install. A lot of the installs it says using npm.
Yeah.
But as I'm using the Mac, I can use Homebrew because I cannot be bothered to figure out if I have npm on here.
Don't want to use Node to install your Python language compiler? Though I think I'm 90% sure that this still uses Node.
It probably does. A lot of it looks a little bit weird when we get going.
I think the brew recipe just kind of wraps Node. Oh, maybe we should have brew updated before you were. Do you want to make it a little bit bigger?
I was just thinking that while it does this. I think I shrunk it down because when I'm just using it myself, I don't need giant type. But in fairness, it's done the update. It's now just fetching all the dependencies.
Yeah, you had 4 things to update. If you had like 20 things to update, it would have been maybe a little bit longer.
Luckily, I don't have that much. This is a relatively new computer, so there isn't that much stuff on it.
The problem I've had recently is I brew installed Vagrant, and to update via brew, it needs the system's password. You need to uninstall Terraform.
That's weird. I don't remember. I don't remember that. I guess we could see if it's actually installed or if it's just brew complaining. No.
So I suppose I normally do Terraform via release now. I've actually stopped doing brew for most of the Hashi products.
That's a good point. I wonder if this is in their releases.
Well, it's a Node thing, so you're not probably just going to be able to like download it and run it.
Yeah, I assume you're right because it seems, yeah. not in here. So let's see if that is now. Okay, that looks like it's now, or Brew's happier. There we go.
Yay!
Is there anything in my directory? Okay, so there's nothing in this directory. Here we have all of this set up and logged in. It's installed, so next step is go on to here. We've installed it. This is the help that we've been running, so you can
I've verified.
gives you some of the commands and what they do. We're probably not going to be doing a load with it. We might do an init, maybe mess around with a synth, and we should do a deploy if all goes well today. So.
And maybe a destroy just to clean up after ourselves.
Yes. So this is talking about doing it with Docker. I have created a directory for this, so I've called it something slightly differently. I think it's just Terraform CDK, which I might delete afterwards because I imagine this is going to get messy. And in this case, this one's using Docker, which looks like it. Good old Docker.
When you're giving Docker 0,
I give it 0 because it sends me that review so many times.
but do you like Docker? That's the question.
I don't like Docker Desktop because it asks me to review Docker all the time. Yeah, is Docker up and running?
You had the green circles.
Yeah, it looks like Docker's happy. I don't have anything. I wonder if I have any dead containers on here. Nope. Do I have any images?
Wow, your Docker is so much cleaner than mine.
I do occasionally clear down my Docker images. I can't remember what there's like. Is it Docker image prune? I think.
I think the last time I cleared out my Docker images, I saved like 30 gigs worth of storage space.
I don't even have any dangling images. That's how clean my Docker is. What else was I doing? Oh, I think it is all just.
It's all the Vault Kubernetes stuff.
Yeah. Is Vault still up?
Because we're thinking about ignoring the recommended tutorial, which is Docker, and going into the Vault secret.
Yeah, we may mess around with that. Maybe run the Docker one and then do another one with Vault. Looks like that's not is. I assume Kubernetes is up.
You have both the green circles, so.
Yeah, good to go.
Well, I suppose, yeah, if we start with the Docker one, we can always.
Where are you seeing the green circles? This isn't.
Oh, if you go up to the Docker desktop
little...
icon, there's 2 green circles at the top. Tells you if it's running.
Perfect. Okay. So the first thing, I think I've gone past the step. Yeah. CD.
And then you run the init.
It's just lost in this giant wall of text.
Yeah.
Let's paste this and I'll go through roughly what this is doing. So the CDK TF init is sort of similar to your Terraform init. It's sort of initializing this as a Terraform CDK directory. The -- template is which programming language that you want to run it in. So in this case, we're running it in Python. And then you can pass your providers here. So in this case, we're doing it as a Docker one. So we're giving it the Docker provider. I assume this is just the person that has written the Docker provider. The one with Vault, just Vault. We can have a look at the providers later and how we can have a look around. And then -- local implies that you're storing the state locally instead of storing it in a Terraform Cloud or Terraform Enterprise backend, or even just pushing it to a remote source. So everything's stored locally. And for deving, that's great. I don't want to push my state to an external backend when I'm just doing
So
testing.
if you don't do the local, will it like ask you for the Terraform Cloud creds?
Shall we find out? See what happens.
Because I
So no, local storage mode isn't recommended for storing state files off your stack. Interesting. Do you want to continue with Terraform Cloud Remote State Management? So it looks like it
so now
pushes you to CDK, and I'm going to go no. And I'm going to write out my things neatly so I can, if I ever look at this stuff, I can remember what's going on.
it's always worth doing. Wow, that hasn't moved your cursor to the right spot.
It's probably the plus. Yeah, I can send crash reports to Hashi. I'm not that bothered.
Able to find pip. Do you have Python installed?
Pippin, I think so.
Or do you need to install pipenv?
One day I will learn that Python-V is not Python version.
I think it wants pipenv. Just.
I'm assuming that's a pip install.
Probably. Good luck finding it. Because it's just like, I have to find pipenv.
I wonder if it actually made anything. Let's see if we actually got any files from that. No.
Oh.
So let's try again. Okay, and I wonder if it would actually send a crash report. So now it's going to spit out a load of stuff as it's creating all the bits and bobs, and this takes a little while. It's just pulling a load of stuff. So okay, we're good. And
oh yeah, you could like run the virtual environment and stuff. I remember. or you can, yeah.
If you're doing this in a more sanitary manner and want to keep all of your Python dependencies nice and tied into one and version locked, then yes. But I'm not that bothered about overlapping my Python dependencies. So we can see we've got a load of stuff in here, and we will open this up in VS and have a little bit of a closer look at this, because although it is fun to do everything on the terminal, sometimes.
What do you mean? Not going to dive into Vim?
I'm good, thanks.
We're not going to become a command line only stream?
And so we've got a git ignore by default, even though this isn't a git repo, I'm pretty sure.
Could you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, that's the next thing on the list.
It's probably just auto assuming that it's a git repo.
Is that big enough?
Yeah, should be. Obviously, people can complain if they can't read it.
I'm sure they will. God, I've lost that. Cool. So we have a git ignore. We have this CDK TF station. It's just sort of telling us about what it is. So we've got this in Python, and then our project ID, and this sort of sending crash reports. And we don't really have that much in here. And I'm not entirely sure what extra stuff to add to this yet. I haven't really got to that point.
This is the same. This is the. I believe this is the only thing that's the same between all languages. Is this file, and you tell it what modules you need to use, what providers you need to use. There's command line ways of adding it, but this is kind of the setup that everything else runs off.
So we have our providers block and modules blocks here that we can, these little arrays we can fill out. Arrays, lists, I guess it's Python.
They are lists.
Depends. Are any of the languages calling them array? I guess Java probably calls them array.
Java will be array because list is a, well, yeah.
Anyway.
You should, in languages that call them arrays, you have to be very certain you want an array before you do that over a list.
Yeah. Here's a little help file. So you've got these different bits, what it does. So compile, so you can compile it and have it ready to run. Although, not sure, would it spit out as like a CI artifact? Would it be a pip module, I guess, potentially? Compile. We can maybe have a mess around with that later if we have some time.
Yeah, it makes something that's quite useful, I think.
I was looking at something earlier, and you can get you can set the CDK up to monitor files to check for diffs and then auto apply, which is quite cool.
Yeah, you can do the watch stuff.
Anyway, synthesize is synthesizing a Terraform resource to apply, and we'll have a look at this in a bit more detail later. Diff, looking at the difference. Deploying is actually getting us to deploy and destroy, and then sort of there's a little bit on how you can use providers. So you can add pre-built providers locally or merge. So we've got this one. You can also find all providers here. So
we currently don't have any providers set up for this thing.
A provider. We have our.
But if you look at the JSON file, the providers thing was empty.
In Terraform providers. I can't remember if this fills out differently. Anyway, we'll see if that.
We can play.
So I think this is raw Terraform providers as opposed to CDK providers.
Oh, I can't remember.
But we'll get there. What else? So it wants me to pip him. I can't remember what I was doing. I just did the CDK one. You can also. So what's it? Here are all of our CDK projects. So we have Azure one, New Relic, the Vault one. I don't know why these have CDK-CDK provider, New Relic. It looks like someone's got a fun naming convention that's ended up with duplications according to their rules.
Perfect naming conventions. What are you talking about? You need to specify multiple times what you're doing, or no one will understand.
I always I don't think it's that widely used, but if you have the same word repeated twice in a naming convention, I go for a convention that if that pattern occurs, you just put 2 or after the word, and if you have 3, it's essentially just power of like how many instances that would pop up.
I try and just not. I like.
If you can create your naming convention in a way that can avoid it, that is preferable. But that's where.
Well, most of the time it's just like arbitrary. It's resources that talk to resources, and they've got the name of the resource they're talking at in their name, which just like scales forever.
Oh, you can manage the HashiCorp Cloud Platform through the CDK. It's interesting.
Yeah, they're properly doing you can manage HCP through Terraform.
But where do you run the Terraform if you're managing your HCP through Terraform?
In Terraform Cloud, obviously.
Getting your loops. What? Why do you have a random? Surely you would just use.
If you want the random to run in the Terraform code, not in your Python script.
Yes, I guess that makes sense.
Because if you're randomizing a password, which I don't think the recommendation is ever to use this to randomize a password. But if you were doing that, you'd want to do it in Terraform, so it's only in the state file, not in HCL, which means the password not in the CDK, because then the password will be in the stack files as well.
I always have a little problem with random in Terraform as well, because eventually, as your infrastructure gets big enough, your random will overlap, and then that causes problems because resources already exist. And if you've got this nice big automated pipeline, it's quite hard to understand what's gone on.
Yeah, I think random's one of those people want that functionality, at least for a random password for spinning something up, which you then override later, isn't that bad of an idea. But
I guess just be careful where you're using random. Right. Okay, the other few files we have. This
make
test
sure your
file.
tests.
Done what all good developers do and not paid attention to any testing in the CDK. I've just dived in, so I don't really know how this works, but I think you can sort of run unit tests against your stacks,
Yeah.
which makes them a little bit more resilient, which is
Well,
nice.
it's one of the benefits of CDK is you can test things.
Yeah, so I think this does just use PyTest, and then
While I is saying we
CDK.
can attach date and time to result random. Um, I mean, you can, but why wouldn't you just do the date and time at that point?
Or I guess if you you could use the date and time as a seed for your random, but
Isn't date and time already? I suppose you only seed at the start of random.
yeah, so if you seeded the random with the date and time, you'd ensure you're not getting the same random, but then it's not actually random.
Isn't it
Anyway,
already? I assume most randoms are already seeded with date and time as at least a like starting point for the way they generate the seed.
yeah, I think they often use like the last few digits of like the milliseconds from your computer clock
Yeah.
because it's very difficult to get it right. So getting randomness right in programming is very tricky because
Entropy.
computers aren't very good at random. I can't remember who it is that has the wall of lava lamps and they have a camera pointed at it
That
through
is
the
Cloud Front. No,
Cloudflare.
Cloudflare. Yeah, the cloud thing, the name cloud that's not owned by AWS,
Perfect.
which I think is Cloudflare.
Yeah, I lose track of all the cloud thingies. Right, next file on the list is main.py. This one we're going to be playing around with in the demo. And this is where you sort of create your resources. They give you a handy comment of defined resources here. Yeah, it's a place to start. You don't have to define all your resources here. You can make modules elsewhere and then call the modules here. But if you're just starting off, we're just going to put resources in this to start off with.
Something fun, which is not important, but Python. You shouldn't really be using classes in Python. We should just be using functions. I'm not saying we shouldn't use a function, but actually no, you're overriding their code. I think.
Yeah. So
Is that Terraform CDK?
that's my
Yeah,
stack is
yeah. You're overriding their code.
and I
But
think
I mean,
that's what they built this in a very object orientated
yeah,
way where they intend you to override things. So if you are working in an enterprise, for instance, you'd have, say, you wanted a particular resource, but you want certain things to be locked down on that resource so they can everything. You'd essentially override the built-in resource and then put in your variables or lock the variables or lock them to ranges for that, which is a nice way
yeah.
to do it.
You can release your own um, module that is the middleware of you've overrided what has to be there, and then people can edit other things.
Yeah. Here is just it's defining an app. An app is kind of the big wrapper around all of the Terraform CDK stuff. So you have apps, stacks, and then constructs, and then I think resources below that. Is kind of the way it works, and you can only have one app per CDK project. Is the way it works.
But you can have multiple different stacks.
Yes, and multiple different constructs within a stack, I think, as well.
Yeah,
So
I think and you can have stack. I think you can have stacks within stacks.
haven't gone. Yeah, that might be an interesting thing to do. So
That was some of the weird stuff I was trying to look into when I was doing it.
Yeah, this is just calling the class my stack here that we've defined, passing it the app that's going to run in, and then giving it a name, which is Terraform CDK.
If you run this, does it do anything?
No, it won't build anything, but we can. Oh. I've also spelled Terraform wrong, but hey. I should just open it. Sorry, I'm used to really broken VS Code where the terminal doesn't work because I work in a bank with really useless computers. Okay, so CDK TF deploy. Not FD. So it'll synthesize, and it has changed a little thing, but there's no outputs, and then you can see nothing added, nothing destroyed. But
Yeah.
we've got
It's run the code, made a state file. There's nothing in the state file.
we've got our pip file, our pip lock, which I don't know too much about.
It's like it'll be like the Node.js log file, which is kind of here's all the hashes of all the stuff you've got installed.
It
So
seems like a more verbose version of the requirements.txt that you normally dump into a sort of Python project.
yeah, so it's going, if the hashes are different than something, then it's not the right piece of software. So it's trying to add security of don't install the middleware, man-in-the-middle attack version of software.
That's nice. Security is always good to have going.
Yeah.
And then this is
A nice empty state file.
yeah. Is this our state from Terraform? To use CDK state. We also have our CDK out now. We've got our manifest in here. So this will map into Terraform, and we've got our stacks. So here, this JSON, you can just pass the Terraform CLI and deploy it that way if you prefer. So I'll have all the information as well as your lock and your sort of .terraform with your Terraform state, again with nothing in it.
Yeah, so what you can do is have one pipeline that builds does the stacks compile thing to build the JSON file, and then that passes it to another pipeline that then takes that and runs it through Terraform. If you wanted to.
Stop complaining about all the different files I have in here. Yes. Okay. Visual Studio is happy that I have enough packages to know what I'm doing now. Okay, so back to the demo or the sort of tutorial. So we've run our init, messed around a little bit in there, and now we're going to actually put something into this main file. So go back to our main. So here we can see we're just currently importing constructs and we're importing an app in the Terraform stack. If I update this with the code from the demo, there's a few things that are added. We're importing from our image part of our Docker provider the image function or image class. I'm not entirely sure how they define them, but well, we use them like this. We also we're bringing in from the container bit container, and from our provider. So as you would have in regular Terraform, you have to declare your provider. So in this one, we're just saying importing provider and calling it Docker, which is fairly simple. There's not really any configuration going on here. We might, if we get onto the Vault stuff, we might have a little bit more in those provider blocks.
So the Docker is if you wanted to have multiple providers. It's the equivalent of provider aliases, I believe. So if you wanted to have two providers the same, if you wanted to have two of the same providers, you can rename it there.
This is the name for Terraform for the provider. If you want to have an alias, you define it like this.
Oh, there's actually an alias thing as well. No, I thought they were the same. So that has to be specific, but it's not. That has to be unique. Sorry, but it's not the alias.
It doesn't really matter. It's just what it will map to in the state.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember. Every resource needs to start. It needs to be self, and then the name of the resource.
Yeah. So next thing we have here is we have a Docker image, which is being put into a variable. So we're calling an image itself, and this one's going to be called nginx image. The name of the image is nginx latest. Keep locally false, so it won't clutter up my Docker images, hopefully. And then the bit that we actually want, the resource that we're going to create, is here. We have container, again, self, and the ID for Terraform, our nginx container, calling it tutorial. We're pulling the image from this Docker image object.name, and we're doing a bit of port mapping. So we're going to map it to 82,000. And then the rest of this is the same. It's the app and the learn tf docker stuff. So let's save this. And if we run our CDK deploy again, we should actually have some deploying. So we can see we've got one stack waiting.
Yay.
Let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see. So you get your sort of Terraform output. We have our create. So we're gonna, these are all your bits about the container. You can see this is being pulled from our image. It annoys me slightly that it's messed up the formatting, but
but if that really annoys you, you can just use Terraform. Like you can build it into the JSON file and then run Terraform yourself.
I wonder if it might be a VS thing as well, but we'll see.
Maybe.
Have I made it so I can't go back to that? And then you can
If you
see,
click the arrow in the top right, I think it will shrink it.
yeah. So we can approve, dismiss, or stop. So in this case, we're going to approve and let that deploy. So now if we run a Docker, you can see that's up. And if we go back to the web browser and go to localhost, that's from last time we were messing with Vault 8000. You can see
Yay.
we've got our basic nginx landing page. So
If you go back there, I'm just curious about something. In the JSON file that it creates,
this one,
the container image, that is a link to the, yeah, so if you, the line 26, so whereas in the code we said variable name.name, that's turned into Docker image dot resource name dot name.
yeah.
So it's still compiled in Terraform, even though we're specifying the variable mapping in the CDK.
Yeah, so this has mapped it into the Terraform sort of format.
I think it's quite interesting. The large portion of what the CDK does just gets mapped into Terraform variable manipulation.
Yeah, I imagine it's sort of something that if you'd really wanted to, you could have built a basic version of it yourself that takes sort of definitions and then just maps them into these JSON files that you have. So you can see we have our container and our image here.
But yeah, if you look at the code, which I have done at one point, it's mostly data struct mapping.
Yeah.
Like it is not a complicated system to take what we're writing and turn it into these structs. It's just a lot of mapping.
Okay, so let's go back and see. Well, I don't think there was anything else left on the basic tutorial. So here's the equivalent of what it would have been in your regular HCL. They've missed out the provider here, which I find is interesting. So this actually wouldn't work.
No, would Docker not be like AWS where you can use it without specifying the provider?
I don't know. I don't know which ones you can and can't do.
I mean, you shouldn't. It's really bad practice. But I know for some of them, you don't need to worry about the provider.
Yeah, see, did I check the image? Yeah, that's it. images there. And then we can have a mess around and we can destroy it as well. So if we go back here, we can tear this all down and get rid of the Docker stuff. So don't need to do it in the name though. But so that's a destroy. So the other interesting command that we'll just quickly show that you might use, so CDK TF and then synth, and it would help if I could spell. I feel like whenever I live demo, my spelling gets significantly worse.
Oh yeah.
So what this does, it hasn't actually done anything here. It will just generate this JSON for you instead of doing, instead of building or destroying anything. It just creates this JSON so that you could then pass that to something else if you wish to.
First step of the process.
Don't want to save that. Yeah, so that's kind of it with Docker. Let's see if we can do it with.
Did the CDK tf.json file update / did you need to update it?
Which one? The CDK tf.json?
Yeah, in the root, sorry.
The root one.
That one.
No.
That's interesting.
I think these
I wonder
are
if,
like full Terraform packages.
yeah, I wonder if it's Docker. I'm sure when I did it with AWS, I needed to specify the provider, but maybe I did without needing to.
I think there's a way you can pull in providers. Yeah.
Yeah, in the help
like,
file, it's
the help file does it through Python, but I think you can do it through the CDK as well.
no,
pip install it.
the CDK provider at line 28.
CDK provider. Oh yeah, CDK provider. Yeah.
Because that would be language agnostic.
So we can just do Vault.
Fun breaking news, they've just added Terraform 1.5 into general availability.
So I think it's citing in 1.5.
I don't know. I think the check stuff, which I think we chatted about a while ago, is in Terraform 1.5. Yeah, so check is now a thing. Import blocks for importing infrastructure. Ooh, so we like the move blocks. So within the HCL itself, you can specify imports. That's nice.
I have a little bit of a checkered history with importing Terraform. It hasn't always gone quite to plan.
But through something like Vault, where the import is the path, you may be able to do that if you destroy the resources and spin it back up. Granted, then Terraform binds correctly. I don't know. I feel the import for things that aren't random URLs, the import block may be nice.
Right, let me go and find the one thing about this that isn't always so fun is the docs for this are not great.
Wait, this function didn't exist before? There's now a str contains function that checks whether a string contains a given substring. I am shocked that wasn't a thing before.
Yeah, I feel that was. So the way I was finding these earlier without doing it through the pip version, which I don't know how much, this doesn't have the greatest docs. So this is a little better. It's not great, but you can, if you search HashiCorp CDK, you have the CDK provider. So if we go into Vault, and then there's a nice way to do this and a not nice way to do this. So you can see you have docs, and you sort of read me down here. And does it have? Yeah. So the way to do this is to navigate through the various readmes. So there's just docs here. You just end up with all of these massive markdowns, and it's a bit of a mess because there's 5 of each for 5 for each resource because it's 1 for each language. So this is a bit of a mess to navigate if you try and do it just through the Git thing. So scroll down to the bit where it says docs here, go Python, and then we have submodules, which is essentially all the same thing. So, and then let's start off with our provider, and it'll give you kind of roughly
everything you can do.
We don't need all of this. So we have the first one's scope, which is contract, and then an ID, which is string. You can see, I think they have a required. Yeah, so if you scroll down a little bit further, you have required and stuff. So let's start setting this up. And I guess we can run it alongside. We can do Docker and Vault in the same one and see if it breaks something.
Or you can make another stack.
Yeah, I guess that would be the neater way to do it. So let's class.
And obviously, if you're doing this properly, you would use different files, and you can import things and all that sort of fun stuff to make it so your code is quite readable.
Properly in a demo.
Oh yeah, it's a demo. I'm just saying, this may not be the best way of doing things.
No. So itself, scope, and that is going to be a construct object. And do you know what the NS is?
NS? NS would be namespace.
Namespace string. Does CDK have namespaces? Would it be work?
No, Vault isn't. Oh, within CDK.
And the init block calls for an NS.
I don't know. I can probably find out. Terraform CDK init NS.
I wonder if it's actually called. So yeah, I guess it's just. Anyway.
So this is the fun thing. So within, I don't know what language this is. There we go. It must be a Python thing because within every other language, it just needs scope and name for the stack. It doesn't need unless NS is name.
Maybe.
Because yeah, it's scope and then name is what it needs. Because yeah, self is Python. I think NS stands for name string. ID within TypeScript. NS within Python.
I should actually probably spin up the Vault cluster for this. I just want to mess around.
Yeah, because it's the structure name that you're passing in. Yeah, so NS is probably name string. Would be my assumption.
Let me just get this up. Can I steal it from the other project that we had the other day? Did we actually make this nice was the question.
Oh, you're actually planning to spin up the Vault.
did I just do it in here? Was that what happened in the end? It has some tidier stuff earlier.
Just curious about the time. If we're gonna, I suppose there's a chance being at the Vault cluster won't be too complicated.
So,
Annoyingly, I made the decision of messing around my Pi earlier, so it doesn't currently have Vault installed. So it's less. I can't just give you the IP because that would probably have made it easier.
I think I can remember what it is. Let me try and just memory it and see how it goes. Do I want to do it from there? Yeah, let's create a server service type that, and then let's just grab the command to deploy it.
Was that all it needs to be in the end? That just one
Yeah.
one node port?
Because the rest can be default. We don't really need anything
Yeah.
else. Do I have namespace on? I think I do. Wrong bit. Yeah, so I have Vault up. Save that, and then the command I need is somewhere in here. It's close enough. It's not exactly this. I don't care about version -f. What do I call it? Vault config. Config.
Just that easy.
Yeah. Cool. I will need to get just init quickly.
Oh yes. I mean, within your Python code, you could probably trigger the API to run Terraform in it, HashiCorp in it, Vault in it. So that's one of those weird things you can do with this because it is just programming. You can't just do like random API calls.
I think
It's
there's
the
something that I don't have to do with it because I was looking at it for. I think that you can't change like the token auth parameters through Terraform by default. There's no resource for it because it's always there. But if you want to tweak it, so I was looking at maybe doing that with it.
Yeah, it's interesting the like what you can do pre-plan config. Which is surprising what you can and can't do.
Kubeexec. Oh yeah, I wonder if this needs to be here, or did I just mess up that space? Oh, well, that looks like it worked. Status, cool. Did this auto unseal? Oh, God damn it. Maybe this. Did we save the keys last time?
Oh, it's the same storage because it's the same namespace.
Yeah, because persistent volumes don't delete themselves. Okay. I think maybe this might be
A
Or
job for another day, because
yeah, I think so. I think maybe wrap it up and I will wipe my Vault instance properly. Yeah, or maybe I can
yeah,
do it now. What was it? CD.
I mean, I wouldn't push too much for it.
Yeah, I just kind of want to wipe it and then forget about it. But I can't. I can never remember where it is.
It's normally OTP slash thingy, isn't it? Or just, I know we do like vault root data. Oh, you just did in data. I think you meant to do in ops slash stuff.
Well, I don't choose where this goes, or I didn't specify where this goes.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the um,
I suppose just put it all in the same place.
can't remove data. Resource busy.
So you need to stop vault, which will kill the container to then be able to.
I remember we managed to do this. I think this will kill the container. I managed to wipe one earlier. Yeah. Let's leave that be. It's something I'll figure out. And
Some homework for next week.
yeah. So let me just drag you back onto screen for closing notes, but I will
Oh no.
stop sharing my screen in Discord as well. So I think yeah, that's kind of it. Hopefully that was interesting
I
to
think it
see
was. I
roughly
like the
how
CDK.
CDK works. And eventually you'll have a better version and or better understanding and be able to do something a little bit more CDK-ish with it, because just deploying in Vault or just deploying a couple of Docker containers through it isn't really the point of the CDK.
It's a lot of work to do what 10 lines of HCL code.
Although interestingly, if you'd never touched HCL before, but you were very good at something like Python, TypeScript, or
Yeah.
Go, that would probably be easier than learning
If
HCL. Although the docs aren't as good, it's the only problem. There's not
I would
as many
like
resources.
I would like to think anyone that can write actual programming language could write HCL, though I accept that there is a so as a I was a programmer before Terraform. Um, there is a level of like, why can't I do this in HCL? And so you have to learn like what you can and can't do and how to make Terraform do what you want. Whereas if you already have the programming language, there's less of the like, how do I mold Terraform and just be like, cool, this is what I want. The CDK can make Terraform do it every once that does what I want. But
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. In which case, I think that'll be it for this week. In my mind, I want to sort of so in meetings, things like I can give you all back 2 minutes of your day.
Just make sure in those 2 minutes, make sure you subscribe, follow, bell, all the other videos on YouTube. The link should be somewhere. I don't think it is, but it should be somewhere. Yeah,
You can populate that and send people across. You can watch the old versions to see how they link together and why my Vault in the Kubernetes cluster is initialized already, but is freshly spun up. So you can watch the struggle from those. But anyway, thanks everyone for watching this week, and we will catch you all next week.